Have you ever spent hours into training mode to learn to do this sick combo you just saw in a character guide or in a combo video? You hopped online ready to chop some heads and you just can't get a hit in. You feel stuck, everything you do gets interrupted, and then you get styled on by some random person that teabags you, fatals you, and then moves on. You feel like you're the worst player of all time, and you just want to quit the game, telling yourself, fighting games, they're just not for me, man. And this series is for you. First of all, nonsense. Fighting games can be for everyone. Hi, and welcome to the Bossfight arcade. This will be the first video of a series of tutorial videos, aimed at complete beginners and people who might just want to get more familiar with fighting game principles because they enjoy watching competition. Whatever reason you may have, my hope is by the end of this video that you feel like you've learned something and that you feel ready to apply it. Definitely let me know down in the comments if what I say makes sense and what you would like to see improved in the future. Even though this series will focus mostly on the newly released Mortal Kombat 1, all I hope to achieve really is that more people get less intimidated by the genre as a whole. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about possibly one of the most intimidating sounding aspects of the fighting game world. Frame data. What is frame data, you may ask? Well, to best explain this, think of a frame as a measurement of time. And in this game, there's 60 frames in a second. In a fighting game, the duration of any attack or move is shown in frames, and every move can be split into 3 parts. You have a beginning, usually called the startup frames, a middle, called the active frames, and an ending, called the recovery frames. This means that for the entirety of a move's duration, you can't do anything else, and you will be committed to this move for the entire duration of frames, starting from the startup until the end of the recovery. So for a moment, let's take Liu Kang here as a visual aid. Liu Kang will perform a quick jab. The startup of this move is 6 frames, the fastest a move can be in this game. So within 1/10 of a second, this move has already come out. Then the active frames begin, which means for as long as this move is stuck out, it can possibly hit the opponent. And then finally he starts retracting his arm and goes back to his neutral pose, which is the entirety of the recovery frames. Let's compare this to this series of kicks here, which takes a much longer time to come out, having a slower startup. It'll stick out for longer, which means it has longer active frames, but it also comes with a longer recovery. Everything you do in this game follows the same structure. All this data around startup, active and recovery frames, that's what we call frame data. So why is this important? As I've said before, doing anything in a fighting game can be seen as a commitment of sorts. Once the startup frames have started, you can no longer move your character and you can't block. Essentially, you're locking yourself in a decision. Your opponent naturally plays under the same rules, locking in decisions in an attempt to move, attack or defend. Of course, you also hope to hit your opponent with your moves, and that's where the second part of frame data comes in.
It's a great story. Bullshit. But great. You should seriously consider becoming a screenwriter. What in the actual
Not only does performing every move come with its own unique frames, you and your opponent will also react when hit by one of these attacks. Whether you block a move or you just get squarely hit in the face, you will lose control of your character for a certain duration of frames, called block stun when you are blocking, and hit stun when, you guessed it, when you get hit. For example, let's go back to Liu Kang's kicks from before, but this time we will look at the difference when we hit an opponent that's blocking and one that isn't, and compare that when Liu Kang misses his opponent completely. Okay. So first, we will force the opponent to block the attack, and then both will jump as soon as possible. What do we notice? Our opponent, Shang Tsung here, is able to move before Liu Kang can. We see Shang Tsung jumping before Liu Kang can even leave the ground. This means Shang Tsung will also be able to attack or do anything else before Liu Kang can. When we compare this to when our opponent is hit, however, we see a stark difference. A visible reaction has Shang reeling backwards from the hit, and it allows Lu to move much earlier than Shang Tsung, keeping Lu on the offensive and pushing Shang Tsung in a defensive position. And when Lu misses his opponent entirely, Shang Tsung is just free to move while Lu is stuck recovering from his kicks, leaving him wide open for some terrible, terrible damage. This is arguably one of the most important parts of these basic fighting game fundamentals. So let's take a closer look at what is actually happening behind the scenes here and check the frame data.
The stance.
When we enable showing frame data in Mortal Kombat's practice mode, it'll show us a lot. When Shang Tsung blocks Liu Kang's kicks, we can see that Liu Kang's block advantage is -3. This means that behind the scenes, the game calculates the difference between the recovery frames of the move, the block stun of the opponent, and in this case it ends with -3. The math itself doesn't really matter, but the result is quite important. Minus whatever means that you will recover that amount of frames after Shang Tsung is fully recovered from blocking the attack. Essentially meaning whatever you try to do afterwards, in this case, it will be 3 frames slower before it comes out, giving your opponents the offensive advantage. If we hit Shang Tsung, however, you will see now we have a hit advantage of 9. Not -9, but +9. The principle remains the same, but now because we hit our move and the opponent is reeling in pain, we get to move again 9 frames faster than the opponent. Which means that even our rather slow kick move now comes out so fast that no matter what Shang tries to do, we will always win. And finally, when a move misses completely, usually we call this whiffing a move, we will have to suffer the consequences and endure the whole recovery duration while our opponent can attack us with some powerful attacks. Now I know this was a lot already, and rest assured, a lot of the numbers and stuff, they're not as important, which will become more clear in the future. I'm just going in depth here with actual numbers and data to show you the idea behind frame data and how, as you can see, this dictates the pace of a round in a fighting game. I mean, feel free to check this first part again if something was unclear before we go to the second part of this tutorial, where we will apply this knowledge of frame data in a simple form which will, I guarantee you, will improve your gameplay. Let's talk now about how we can actually use this data to your advantage, knowing when to generally block, start your offense, or punish your opponent for doing something reckless. All moves fall into one of 3 categories when they are blocked. Safe moves, unsafe moves, and plus moves. At the start of this tutorial, we saw that blocking Liu Kang's kicks gave us a block advantage of -3. While this is a negative number, it is safe on block, which means that even the fastest moves in the game, which usually have a startup of 7 frames, will not come out fast enough to hit you before you are allowed to block. So even though Liu Kang has to wait 3 whole frames before he can do anything again, he will always be able to block faster than Shang Tsung's 7 frame attack can hit him, because there is a 4 frame difference. Mind that even though you can block, if you try to press any button after a save on block move, which is not the block button, if your opponent attacks, they will always hit you before you hit them. Think of it as you now having to add your negative frames to the startup of any move you want to use. Essentially, your opponent now has the offensive advantage. When a move would interrupt another move, it is called a counter hit, which means that you got hit during the start of your moves. So if you see a lot of counter hits happening when you are being hit, it means that you are most likely trying to attack when you should be blocking. Every move that is blocked and is -7 or more on block is generally considered safe. I say generally as 2 characters in the game have in fact 6 frame startup moves, being Liu Kang and Kung Lao respectively. But those are the exceptions to the rule. When a move leaves you -8 or lower on block, that's why we call a move unsafe. It's unsafe because now your opponent will be able to hit you with one of their moves and punish you for it before you can ever block. In MK1 you will see an indicator saying punish on the screen when this happens. A punish can only happen when an opponent gets to hit you while you are still recovering from your move. A lot of special moves tend to be unsafe on block. We have a new opponent, Reiko, here, and he punishes Liu Kang's iconic bicycle kick for some serious damage, and he gets to be on the offensive afterwards. But even something as innocent looking like a crouching light punch in this game, when blocked, is unsafe. Every character's crouching light punch is 7 frames of startup, but -8 on block. And even if you weren't quick enough to react to blocking this move and punishing it, their turn is over, as any other move they try to do will start 8 frames later. So if you see an opponent just mashing attacks like that, block it and make him suffer for it. Being able to recognize unsafe moves and punishing them accordingly is a cornerstone of playing fighting games. Now, in some instances, attacks that are blocked are plus on block, meaning that even after your opponent blocked the attack, you still get to press on. When we use Liu Kang's Dragon Fang punches, for example, we see that the block advantage here is 3, not -3, but 3, meaning he will recover 3 frames faster than his opponent. If they try anything afterwards, you will have the opportunity to interrupt them with a fast enough move. You can think of it as now you get to shave off those frames of the startup of your next move. And this is basically the dance that develops between two opponents, being in a constant flux of frames, trying to get the upper hand during the round. It's all basic math in the end, but it's important math. Now there is much more to it once the players' minds clash, right? And you try to overload your opponents with options so that they cannot easily and quickly enough decide what the answer has to be. The biggest part to take away from all of this is understanding the principle of safe moves, unsave, and plus moves. You don't need to know the exact numbers, but it will put you in a huge advantage over most of the other player base, just knowing what moves you have are plus, unsave, and save. Sometimes all you need to do is just block and punish your opponent who keeps doing these unsafe moves on block. I know it is very tempting to just try and attack always, all the time, but this will get you quickly destroyed once your opponent knows when to go in to counter or punish, and you'll feel terrible about it. So be more mindful of pressing buttons, honestly. That's where it all comes down to it. And that's going to be about it for me for this video. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know if I missed anything, or if there was a certain part where I was very unclear, because the next tutorials will build upon this knowledge, teaching the basic anatomy of a match, pressure, hit confirming, jailing, frame traps, staggers, all that other good stuff. And all of it involves the basic understanding of frame data. So I just wanted to get this mostly theoretical part out first, but it will be like a stepping stone for all future tutorials. And if you are still here, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to my very first ever attempt at a tutorial. I enjoyed trying to make this, honestly, as it is a good challenge to keep things as simple as possible or as clear as possible for people who have never heard or seen any of these fighting game concepts. So once again, if I missed something, definitely let me know so I can take this feedback and use it in the upcoming videos. And if you liked some of this stuff, or you feel like it helped you out, I'd love to hear it too. Let's keep talking Mortal Kombat.